You're listening to Sound Money from Casey Research.
Hello and welcome to the show with me, your host Andy Duncan, coming to you today from Chennai in India, a town formerly known as Madras. My special guest today is Mitchell Demeter, the president and co-founder of Bitcoiniacs, creators of one of the first Bitcoin ATMs, and he's coming to me today from London. On the show, we'll be talking about Bitcoin ATMs, the challenge Bitcoin faces from established fiat currencies, and the recent decision of the IRS to treat Bitcoin as taxable property rather than simply currency. Hello, Mitchell.
Hello, sir.
Okay, now I just want to be the devil's advocate for a moment. Isn't Bitcoin just a wild, volatile speculation for anarcho-capitalist techno-geeks rather than being a proper currency?
Yeah, a lot of people would say that, but the thing to remember is that we're in the very early stages of this, and it is a lot of tech guys in this right now. But what we're doing is working very hard to bring this to the masses and make it easy to use for everybody.
And what made you switch into becoming a Bitcoin evangelist?
I first got involved in Bitcoin back in January of last year, and what really caught my attention is the ability to transfer wealth instantly around the world, anywhere, at any time, with no limits. And this is something you've never been able to do before. Any time in history. And so that really caught my attention, and I see a lot of potential for that around the world.
Now, do you think this is actually worrying banks? Because up till now, we've had to use long, complicated SWIFT kind of transfers from place to place with lots of kind of computer stuff, with the banks taking big cuts of the money as the money moves around the world. With Bitcoin being this kind of instant kind of transfer, do you think banks themselves are getting really worried about it?
Yeah, to a certain extent, I can see the banks getting a little bit worried. Somebody actually just quoted an article that it's a little bit like the oil industry helping the solar industry, and that it is definitely one part of what's going on right now. But ultimately, this is a technology that even the banks can embrace.
And these ATMs, we've seen a lot in the kind of press about these ATMs in Vancouver and Singapore and a few other places. Are they actually fulfilling a need, or are they more a kind of advertising gimmick?
They're both. What they do is they put something that is a little bit abstract and online into a physical form. So people that aren't as comfortable online, they can come down, they can buy Bitcoins in person, they can talk to somebody. And so it just makes that real world connection.
And what plans do you have for expanding your ATM network?
So we've got the first one that is in Vancouver, and that's still operating. And we actually just launched one in Singapore, and I'm down in London right now in the process of launching one here. And after that, we're going to Japan and one in Romania.
And Bitcoin itself, it's expanded massively in the last year or so. Is it going to keep expanding, do you think? Or do you think governments are going to step in and try to cramp its style in some way?
To a certain extent, there's definitely going to be some regulation, which is inevitable, and it's arguably almost good for the industry. It would almost legitimize it. But I definitely see we're on a major growth trend, and I think things are really going to pick up in the next year. During the last rally back in November, it got a lot of people's attention, including a lot of VC companies. And so those people and entrepreneurs around the world have been working on projects, and those projects are about to launch over the next quarter or next 6 months here. And so I think in the next few months we'll see another round of innovation, and the space will continue to develop.
Now, some governments, such as the Chinese, have actually tried to cramp Bitcoin in quite a way with lots of increasing regulations. Do you think Bitcoin is going to be just a kind of Western world thing with countries like China blocking it completely? Or is the Bitcoin technology just going to get round any kind of blockages like that?
Well, the one nice thing about Bitcoin is it's just like the internet. And the internet is very hard to block. And it's very hard to build borders around. And so I definitely think that it'll continue to grow and it'll continue to flourish. And in some developing countries, it's actually needed more than in the Western countries. In a lot of Western countries, we've got banking systems that fulfill the need and do a job that they're doing right now. But in a lot of developing countries, we don't have those systems. And that's where Bitcoin will really shine.
Now, one of the biggest stories in the last couple of weeks with Bitcoin has been the IRS in the United States. They've come up with some new tax rules which class Bitcoin as property rather than as a currency. What effect do you think that this is going to have on Bitcoin?
It's really going to be interesting to see how it plays out, because in certain cases they are saying it's currency, and then in certain cases they're saying it's property. And so there's a lot of gray and a lot of uncertainty, and I think it's going to be a little bit of time before things are really clear in that space.
You mentioned it earlier on the regulatory side. Now, some people have been frightened by things like Silk Road and stories about such things in the past with Bitcoin. Do you think these cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin absolutely need global regulation to be successful, or do you think that they could survive as just being completely free?
I think they could definitely survive being completely free. I think for the average person to have faith in them and have trust, there is a certain level of regulation that will be required.
And who do you think is going to implement that regulation? Will it be a Bank of International Settlements thing, an IMF thing, or will it just be a kind of global hodgepodge of regulatory measures?
I think what's going to happen is there's going to be a country that comes out and either really embraces it, and that'll kind of set the standard, or a country will come out and try and control it and slow down the innovation and slow down the growth, and that'll be the standard. So at this point, it really could go either way.
Now, some people who don't really believe in Bitcoin, they would prefer to see gold or silver being used as money, who are on the kind of hard money side of things. What do you think about gold and silver as money as opposed to Bitcoin?
Gold and silver are both great. I've always really loved both of them, and I like the whole concept of sound money. The thing that I really like about Bitcoin is it's very similar. The big difference here is you can transport this across borders instantly for almost no fees. And so you can move $1 million worth of Bitcoin out of India to London right now as we talk on the show, and that's something that you just can't do with gold.
And your ATMs themselves, can you just describe to us how they actually work? What do? You put dollars in and get some Bitcoin numbers out? How do they actually work?
Yeah, so our ATMs are actually the only two-way ATMs on the market right now. And so you can walk up, you can deposit dollars, and it'll send you Bitcoin, or you can send your Bitcoin into the ATM, and it'll dispense dollars for you.
Well, it's been interesting talking to you, Mitchell, about Bitcoin. Where can our listeners find out more about Bitcoiniacs?
The best place to find us, we've got a site called Bitcoiniacs.com, and we've also got an online exchange which is called CoinTrader.net. And CoinTrader is our online exchange platform that all of our ATMs are connected to. That's where all the back-end trading is done, and there's a lot of great information on there.
Okay, thank you very much for your time today, Mitchell Demeter.
Perfect. Thank you.
You can subscribe to Sound Money on iTunes or sign up to our subscription service at soundmoneyshow.com, where you can also listen to our growing catalogue of podcasts, which include interviews with some of the most famous speakers on money in the world. These include Jim Rogers, Doug Casey, Mark Farber, and many more. A special thank you today to Mitchell Demeter for joining us on the show, and thank you too very much for listening. Until next time, goodbye.